We're going to move right along here to our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Salman Pervaiz, but he joins us today from Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi. He's built a tremendous career over the last 24 years, contributing in every aspect of our field. He's the very personification of giving back and helping others, and it's my pleasure to welcome him to speak to us today about a pathway to facilitate cross-border mobility for perfusionists. Please welcome Salman.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Salman. And first of all, I would like to thank Richard to invite me here on this excellent event. My talk is not going to be very, very scientific, but I believe it is an important topic. I wrote a letter to an editor about this topic because I'm getting a lot of text messages on LinkedIn for jobs and getting career in the UK, because I actually come from, I've seen three systems. One system from South Asian country where I belong from, Pakistan. I moved to UK, spent 20 years there. So I'm aware of the UK system as well, and now back in the Middle East. So people are trying to get better career growth in their life, and as a perfusionist, you're trying to help them. And when I'm getting all these messages, I thought like to write a letter to the editor and see if put it out there if something can be done, and make it at least a question out there for the world to look at. Nothing to disclose. The issue I already explained, and we will be discussing what are the factors which are affecting these kind of imbalances between job shortages and or access in availability of perfusion in some of the countries. So there are two extremes I look at if we compare the developed and the developing countries. So we'll be looking at some of the discussions on them and finding a solution if there is. I don't think there's any linear solution to that, but obviously it is a complex process. This is the article we have written last year. It doesn't actually only for, it's not specific for only perfusionists, but it's looking at 10 years data or 10 years publication review articles on the job market between developed and developing countries and what is happening out there. So we wrote that in start of 2023. The main point, the fourth point actually relates to perfusionists, which is the new healthcare graduates in developing countries faces challenges due to the limited job openings and mentorship opportunities. What it tells you is that there are a lot of graduates are being given the opportunity to be in the school and get graduated, but they are not actually having the opportunity of clinical work. Our main work is actually, as a perfusionist, is clinical. So if you're not actually getting the job or hands-on experiences, then obviously getting a degree at the end is going to be pretty much useless. So what I did a survey in one of the developing countries, which is a very short kind of a survey, and I picked up some of the questions which are relevant to the topic. The questions were, are you currently employed? So the respondents were only 85 at the time, and 43% said actually no, so they were not employed, and some of them, most of them were actually graduates, which is quite astonishing. Are there a sufficient number of cardiothoracic units that are offering practical perfusion training? So obviously they are not sufficient. 57% said that there are not sufficient centers available. So basically you may be doing the didactics or all the academics, but you're not actually going to a unit to do cases or supervised cases or practical trainings. Is there an oversupply of perfusionist graduates? Obviously, 76.2% said yes, because they are more producing than there are the job availability there. Do you think the universities are offering just because of the financial reasons? So obviously that is the fact which needs to be highlighted to the governmental level, because what is happening is that all these units are being given accreditation to offer these these students kind of false hope that they will get a career and obviously you become a perfusionist. And on top of that, when they go into the LinkedIn, it's a global world. When they look at on LinkedIn with $60,000 sign-on bonus for a job in US, then obviously they thought that this is a career they should be looking for. And that actually highlights that, but they don't know whether they're going to get that or not, because obviously their qualification may not be recognized later. So do you believe that certain perfusion graduates opt for alternative careers? I know some of them are working as a coders. There are some from India, some from Pakistan. They call me up from because I'm in the UAE, because in Cleveland Clinic everybody wants to join the Cleveland Clinic. The pay is good, so some of them are working as doing odd jobs, even after getting qualified, moving into the country or trying to get out of the country. So it's actually quite a sad affair. If given the opportunity, where would you prefer to work? So 73.3% says, obviously, abroad, UK, US, or anywhere else. So for the better growth, you don't blame them for better career, and obviously for better family opportunities and growth and everything. Then I would come here, and I spoke to some of the colleagues I actually know in US, and I thought like get some sort of a data about them too, and what is happening around here, because some of the articles I've read, they actually talk about shortages for perfusionists in the US. So I did a little bit of search. I don't know whether I'm going to be fully correct on this data, but what I found is that recently there are increase in number of schools from 17 to 21 in the last few years. Increased number of schools does not always mean that you are going to get more students, because some of them actually will offer only 2 to 3 students, and somewhere might have a year gap for having a student there. There's one big issue which I found through the data and also talking to people is the geographical issue, because one-fourth of the workforce, which is about 1,000 qualified perfusionists, comes from these 3 states. And Texas has only 3 schools. Florida has 1, which is now closed, I heard, because of the COVID, and California never had a program. So obviously, you have big clinical places where actually doing most of the work, because obviously these CCP qualified perfusionists reflects the number of work and amount of work which is going on in America in those places. So it's obvious that you should have more schools there to have more clinical placement, because then you can produce more students for the workforce in US. So I think that's the biggest issue geographically. When looking at these 2023 report from American Board of Cardiovascular Perfusion, the numbers looks good. Sometimes you have positive, sometimes you have negative. Sometimes I believe these negatives are because of people are retiring or not certifying, and the positives are you are gaining more new students, and they are entering into the workforce. What I did was to take 10 years data out of this and see what are the positive, just to show the trend that we are still, if we're moving forward, is minus 99 is your trend moving forward. Again, I mentioned about these results from the survey. I think it highlights a clear reference of vacancy rate above 12.3% and the turnover of 14.7%. Significance of the rates were subjectively severe compared to the other healthcare professions, categorized in the highest of the workforce shortages. Reasons for the vacancy rate were, whoever the participants were mentioned, were increase in demand for perfusion services, and clinicians and perfusionists are leaving the workforce. Future projection by this survey was expectations of increasing vacancy and turnover rates, and potential solutions were given by the participants for exploration of perfusion assistants. I'm not sure whether these perfusion assistants can become fully qualified in the future, or that kind of a route they were given, or option in the mindset, and the flexible and non-call positions to attract more workforce. Obviously, nobody wants to do on-call. That's one aspect. Other aspect is looking at role of the perfusionist, because that's just one aspect. What is the supply and demand from the universities to producing the students going into the workforce market? Now we talk about perfusionist role, because role has been expanding. We are not only in OR, just flow up and down. I think we are actually doing a lot more than that, just because what is happening around us. ECLS has actually gained quite a traction for the last decade, I will say, since COVID-19 is actually increased so much, and people's faith has developed in this kind of modality. And other things what we do, point of care, as some have mentioned this morning, that point of care, some of the perfusionists deal with it, like tags, rotem. It's actually extra work what you do. It's time consuming for establishment of a department. Same as standby procedures, the cardiology might have taken some work from cardiac surgery, but obviously they're still not fully, you always have surgeon standby for a TAVR or lead extraction or some other high-risk PCI. So obviously, where there's a cardiac surgeon involved, you will have to be a standby perfusionist there. Organ transplantation, procurement, and preservation, obviously perfusionists are involved. These are just the clinical things. This gives you a little bit of a snapshot of pre, intra, and post-op usage of ECMO applications, just to show or create a relation that if this amount of work is increasing in these kind of things, then obviously perfusionists will be involved in some sort of space. Those were just the clinical things. Non-clinical things, any department would look at their non-clinical aspects. Like if you're running a department of 10 perfusionists, obviously you have to look at the sickness levels. N+1 is another issue, which is a bigger, we really debate about that in the UK, that you always have to have an N+1. Means that if you're running 2 sites, then there should be another third person, which is outside for a safety feature. So that should be there as a component. So it increases the staff level, education. People need to do progression in the career. If somebody wants to do a course, if you only have 2 perfusionists, how are you going to allow them to go for another progressive course, what they want to do? So obviously all these things, work-life balance also comes into it. Then I did a search on Google. I thought, like, what is happening from an expansion point of view in US, and this came up that about 78 heart centers are going to be, either they are new centers opening, expanding, or upgrading themselves. So obviously, if this happens, it will have an impact on the workforce from US point of view. I'm going to give you some personal scenarios. I don't think I'm taking a lot of time, but I think I still got time. So personal scenarios, like when people text me, and say things like, they want to come to US and, earn those 60,000 sign-on bonuses. I don't know how much tax is that behind it, but obviously it's quite attractive, and I think the most competitive salary in the world. So people will get attracted. So one of the, I'm going to present you like a case. So this is a guy who's actually, it's not a patient, it's a perfusionist. So experience with 25 years, was a nurse before and then become perfusionist, got certified in Canada, also worked in US, went to UK, worked there as well, is a practicing perfusionist in UK. When he wanted to come back to US again and start career. So he will have to sit for an exam to do that. And he thinks that this is his question, how many of us would like to sit an exam after 25 years? The answer is very clear. Similar kind of a case, 24 years of experience, it sounds like it's me. But, you do all these things, and at the end, when you contact you want to come and work in the US, you find out that the option is that get admission in the US university. And I can tell you, out of those 21 universities, there are only maybe 1 or 2 will be willing to give you an admission to do another MSc course. So there's quite a restrictive kind of approach right there, just to say that. I don't know whether it's positive or negative, but I think this is just to highlight. So from a get-go, you're actually not going to be entering into the market as a perfusionist. So that's why, there's a shortage. If you can deal with that as a shortage as well. Then giving past and present, because obviously people would be thinking about, the standard would be a bit different in South Asian country or a Middle Eastern country or UK or Europe or US. That's why obviously the standards don't match. So it cannot be. So obviously that's the reason of creating that sort of pathway. But I can tell you the equipment is same, what people use nowadays. Knowledge is pretty much similar because of the global learning platforms, training, education. All the surgeons who actually go back they are all mostly trained from US and UK and Europe, go back to the other developing countries, and they actually bring their techniques with them, and that's what they actually learn from them. 2 big things which can be effective, affecting this whole cultural, whole thing of creating a pathway is culture. Obviously, culture is a different thing because that's what I've observed from different countries. Another thing is the communication. Let's say you're moving to a English-speaking country, and if you don't know how to speak English, that's not your fault, but obviously that will be one of the factors that you need to look at when you're creating these kind of pathways. This was the letter which was published, and I already mostly talked about whatever I actually said, but I think these are the major factors which you can see that will affect, more. The biggest thing is actually creating all these bigger organizations, let's say Society of Clinical Perfusion, European board, or, and American board. They need to talk to each other and see what they can find out. Even people want to come from UK to US, how they can work together. Because if the other professions can do it, we can do too. Because nursing have done that long time ago. In different countries, in Australia, UK, US, they have a fast-track route to go into that system. Same as sonographers, radiographers, and all those other professions. So this is, I'm going to skip that through. Just one of the points on here is what are the challenges in this letter. What I've highlighted is that there are some of the courses which are present there, which is called CESA, all these ECMO-related courses offered by different institutes in US. I don't know whether they actually reflect into any job opportunities because a lot of people around the world will do them, but obviously by thinking maybe that they will get a job on the basis of that, but which is not true. I think that should also be a disclaimer to start with when you offer these courses. They might get gain from this when in their own country or growth, but obviously they won't actually be helpful to get you a job. Or maybe it looks good on the letters on your signature thing. So lack of recognition across the border, obviously that's one of the challenges as well. And countries are prioritizing their domestic force, which is not a bad thing, which they should do. What needs to be done is bilateral agreements. As I said, that streamlining the licensing process. I went to, if you want to make it really easy, you can, if you want to. Because when I actually went from UK 3 years ago to UAE, Abu Dhabi, and Cleveland Clinic, my license was, because they said you are UK qualified, you will have to go. If you're not UK qualified, you will have to do a didactics exam, and then you will do a practical or a Viva exam. So they skipped the didactics, obviously looking at the credentials. So you can always make it faster for people. It should be on the individual basis, not one size fit for all. So coming back to a UK model, just to give you a snapshot of what happens there, because there's something to learn from this. I think this is how you can keep a control on a market which not overflowing and obviously not underflowing as well. So what happens for a national trainee? Recruitment is always done by the employer with a minimum qualification set by the university, 2 years block release course of MSc, which they get from the University of Bristol. It's actually on the job training. This actually solves the resources issue. What exists in the US, because what they do 3 weeks at work, 1 week at university. So they get hands-on experience. What it actually extra give you benefit is that you have extra bodies at work with you, because they are not actually all the time at the university. They will be trained in 3 to 4 weeks or a month or two. They will be independently doing your cell savers, balloon pumps, transferring the patient from ward to the ICU to the OR. There are other helps they can actually offer on the way while becoming perfusionist. So what happens? University fee is also paid by the employer. They also get salary during that time, and on completion they become they do the academic part and 150 clinical cases and become qualified. So this is how they and it also takes a control on how many you need for a year. Let's say the establishment of a department is 10, they're losing 2, and they can predict that 2 are retiring. They hire 2 trainees and they will send it to the university. They do have an overseas route. So this is just to look at experienced perfusionists are hired by the employer. They pick them up, obviously, and then they will check their qualification with the university and they offer them a job. So what they do, this is a fast track route. They don't have to do 2 years. They go for a 1-year postgrad certificate, and they go there and do the same as 3 weeks block release and also 1 week at the hospital. Fee is also paid sometimes for the visa for them while they're coming over. And on completion, they only need to do 75 cases, not 150, to become qualified. So that's what they get in the end. That's also a route. Just to quickly, I did a poll. I didn't get much time, so I think I did it like 3 days ago. I thought just to check before we go into US what people are thinking. I don't know where they actually are from mostly, but I think the question was asked that do you think that there should be a clear fast track process for overseas experienced perfusionists to work in the United States? There were 4 questions asked, and the highest one was a yes, it addresses shortages. That was the first option. The second one says that no, job market will overflow. Obviously, that's also a concern. And the third one supports the overseas perfusionist growth. So I came up with this kind of linear kind of diagram. I think they could be always a fast track, as I mentioned before, and emphasize that there's different kind of rules for different people can be adopted to accommodate them. That will help, the person as well the staff shortages in any country. And this has been done before with other professions. And why not we can do? So the take-home message is, why not learn from the other professions? Why not look at the option of having overseas perfusionists on board in US? Thank you for having me today.